Someone says something about you, maybe indirectly or with a tone, and instantly you feel it. That urge to respond, to correct it, to make sure they don't get away with it. And right now, with the sun moving into Taurus, this exact moment is where most people are about to slip up without even realizing it, because you're about to be tested more than ever. This shift is going to bring situations that subtly push you, get a reaction out of you, and before you even notice, your mind is already working on what to say, and it feels justified. It feels like strength. But in that moment, you've already committed the biggest mistake. But this shift is here to show you exactly where that pattern is costing you and how to break out of it if you're paying attention. Every time you explain yourself to someone who wasn't even trying to understand you, you gave them your power. Not a little bit, all of it. Because explaining isn't just talking. It's you trying to fix how you're being seen. It's you trying to correct a version of you that exists in someone else's mind. And the moment you do that, you step into their frame. Most people don't even notice this. They think they're being clear. They think they're being mature. But underneath it, there's something else driving it. The need to be understood. The fear of being seen the wrong way. But here's what shifts now. Being misunderstood isn't the problem. Needing the wrong people to understand you is. Taurus doesn't chase clarity with people who already made up their mind. It doesn't argue with misinterpretation. It doesn't defend its value. Because the people who are meant to get you already do. And the ones who don't, no explanation was ever going to fix that. There's something deeply uncomfortable about being misunderstood. Not slightly off, completely wrong. Someone forms an idea about you that doesn't reflect who you are, and your first instinct is to step in and correct it before it spreads, before it sticks, before it defines you. So you explain, you clarify, you try to set the record straight. But what most people don't realize is that the moment you do that, you've already accepted something you shouldn't have. You've accepted that their version of you needs your attention. And now you're tied to it. You're tied to their perception, their interpretation, their opinion. And suddenly you're investing time and energy into something that was never built on truth to begin with. That's the trap. Because the more you try to fix how people see you, the more you stay connected to people who don't even matter in your life. You keep the conversation alive. You keep the link active. You keep yourself involved. And sometimes the fastest way to disconnect is to let them be wrong. Because here's the truth. People who are committed to misunderstanding you aren't waiting for clarity. They're waiting for a reaction. And the moment you stop giving them that, the entire dynamic changes. This is where it becomes real. The sun moving into Taurus isn't abstract. It's not symbolic in some distant way. It shows up in how you move, what you give your attention to, and what you stop entertaining starting right now. Taurus is not here to argue. It's here to build. And you can't build anything solid while you're constantly reacting to things that don't even deserve your time. So the question becomes simple. Where in your life are you over-engaging? Where are you replying too much, explaining too much, checking too much, reacting too fast? Because that's exactly where your energy is being scattered. This next stretch isn't about doing more. It's about removing what's unnecessary. It's about identifying the one situation, the one pattern, the one person that keeps pulling you into noise, and stepping back from it completely, not slowly, not partially, cleanly. Growth isn't always about adding something new. It's about finally stopping what's been draining you. Taurus energy doesn't chase progress. It protects what matters and ignores what doesn't. And if you actually follow that, even just in one area of your life, you'll start to feel something shift almost immediately. Welcome back. It's time for today's comment. Don't let the fear from others stop you from finally entering the new frontier that awaits you. This one hits in a different way, because sometimes the fear you're dealing with isn't even yours. It comes from other people, what they say, what they doubt, what they project. And if you're not careful, it can start to shape your decisions without you even realizing it. But this is a reminder that your direction shouldn't be controlled by someone else's limits. That new frontier part, that's yours to step into. And most of the time, the only thing standing in front of it is hesitation that was never really yours to begin with. Thank you for sharing this. Something subtle starts to happen when you stop reacting so much. Your attention shifts, not into more thoughts, but out of them. You start noticing your body in a way that's hard to ignore. Small things at first. What drains you? What actually feels good? What you suddenly have no patience for anymore? It's not dramatic, it's not emotional, it's quiet, but it's clear. Taurus pulls you out of your head and puts you back into your physical reality. And once that happens, overthinking loses its grip. You don't need to analyze everything anymore because your body starts giving you direct answers. You walk into a place and immediately feel whether it's right or not. You talk to someone and you can sense the tension without needing to decode it. You notice when you're forcing something because it doesn't feel stable, and that changes your decisions. Because now you're not choosing based on what sounds good, you're choosing based on what actually holds. Your body knows what your mind keeps trying to justify. That's why certain things start falling away without effort. Not because you're trying to let go, but because they no longer feel solid enough to stay. And once you start trusting that, you stop needing constant confirmation from the outside. There's a type of presence that people don't understand, but they feel it instantly. It's not loud, it's not performative, it doesn't try to dominate the room, but somehow it controls the energy without saying much at all. It comes from one thing, being impossible to read, not closed off, not distant, just settled. When someone tries to provoke you and nothing happens, it breaks their expectations. When they expect a reaction and don't get one, they don't know where they stand. And that uncertainty creates a tension, because most people are predictable. You can tell what will trigger them, what will make them respond, what will pull them into a situation. And once someone can predict you, they can influence you. But when that pattern disappears, everything changes. Mystery isn't created by hiding, it's created by not reacting. Taurus carries that naturally. It doesn't give away energy unless it chooses to. It doesn't respond just because something happens. It stays grounded in itself, and that groundedness becomes magnetic. People start watching more closely. They start paying attention to things they would have ignored before. Not because you're doing more, but because you've stopped giving away everything for free. And the moment that shift happens, you realize something most people never do. The less you react, the more control you actually have. The sun doesn't express itself the same way in every sign, and in Taurus, its energy becomes noticeably different. It slows down, but not in a way that holds you back. It slows down in a way that stabilizes you. If you're used to fast shifts, sudden bursts of motivation, or moments where everything feels intense and then fades just as quickly, this energy might feel unfamiliar at first. It doesn't push you into rapid change. It doesn't create urgency for the sake of movement. Instead, it holds a steady pace that doesn't break easily. That changes how progress feels. Instead of chasing quick results, you start noticing what actually lasts. Instead of jumping from one thing to another, your focus becomes more consistent. And that consistency creates a different kind of momentum, one that doesn't rely on constant highs to keep going. The strongest momentum is the one that doesn't need intensity to continue. Under this influence, things don't need to feel dramatic to be meaningful. Growth doesn't have to come with pressure. Direction doesn't need to be loud to be clear. You might notice that you're less interested in things that spike your attention quickly but don't hold it. You might find yourself drawn to what feels stable, what feels real, what you can actually build on without it collapsing a few days later. This is where endurance becomes more valuable than speed. Because anything that starts under this kind of energy has a different quality to it. It's not rushed. It's not forced. It develops at a pace that allows it to hold its shape over time. And that changes your relationship with progress entirely. You're no longer measuring growth by how quickly something happens. You're measuring it by whether it stays. What builds slowly under pressure tends to last longer without it. That's the shift happening here. It's not about doing more, it's about building something that doesn't need to be constantly restarted. And once you align with that pace, you stop feeling like you're chasing something. You start feeling like you're actually creating something that can stay. There's a trap hidden inside something that sounds completely positive, and that's the need to be understood. At first, it feels harmless. You just want people to see you clearly. You want your intentions to land the right way. So when something gets misinterpreted, you step in and explain it. You clarify your words, your actions, your decisions. You try to make sure there's no confusion left. But over time, that habit starts to reshape you in ways you don't notice. You begin adjusting how you express yourself based on how you think it will be received. You soften certain things, emphasize others, reword your thoughts, not because you're being dishonest, but because you're trying to avoid being misunderstood again. And slowly, without realizing it, your truth becomes something you manage instead of something you simply live from. That's where the dependency forms. Because now, your clarity isn't something that stands on its own. It depends on whether other people interpret it correctly. And when they don't, you feel pulled to step back in and fix it. The moment your truth needs to be explained to feel real, it starts losing its weight. The problem is, explaining doesn't actually solve this. It often makes it worse, because people don't hear you in a neutral way. They hear you through their own perspective. Their assumptions, their expectations, their past experiences all shape how they interpret what you say. So even when you explain something perfectly, it can still be misunderstood. And that pulls you deeper into the cycle. You explain again, you try again, you refine it even more. And now you're not just expressing yourself, you're negotiating your clarity with every person who questions it. That's exhausting, and it keeps you tied to people who were never aligned with you in the first place. This is where the shift into Taurus changes everything. Taurus doesn't operate like that. It doesn't reshape itself to be easier to understand. It doesn't adjust its nature so it can be received better. It stands in what it is, fully and quietly, without needing constant interpretation to confirm it. Think about something solid, something that doesn't move just because someone doesn't understand it. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't argue for its existence. It simply holds its position, and over time, everything else has to adjust around it. Clarity isn't something you argue for, it's something you stand in. And when you start moving like that, something changes in your life. The pressure to explain fades. The need to correct every misunderstanding disappears. You stop chasing clarity in places where it was never going to be received. When you stop reacting the way you used to, the first thing you notice isn't inside you. It's in how other people start behaving around you. At first, it's subtle. Conversations feel different. People hesitate a little more before saying certain things. The same individuals who used to test you, provoke you, or casually cross lines don't do it as easily anymore. And the interesting part is, you didn't confront them, you didn't explain anything, you didn't make a scene. You just stopped overextending yourself. That alone shifts the entire dynamic. Most interactions are built on patterns. People learn what they can get from you based on how you respond. If you always explain, they expect explanations. If you always react, they expect reactions. If you always try to fix things, they expect you to carry that role. But when that pattern breaks, they don't know how to approach you the same way anymore. And that's where respect starts to form. Not forced respect, not something you demand, but the kind that develops when people realize they can't easily pull something out of you. You're not available for every small exchange. You're not open to every unnecessary conversation. You're not reacting just because something happened. The less you need to prove yourself, the more solid you appear. This is why people who don't chase validation often receive the most respect. They're not trying to be seen a certain way, and because of that, their presence feels more grounded. There's no sense of them reaching outward for approval, which makes them feel stable in a way that others instinctively recognize. Every reaction you have carries value, whether you realize it or not. Your attention, your time, your emotional energy, your explanations, all of it is something you give. And every time you respond to something, you're spending a piece of that. The problem is, most people don't treat it like it has value. They react automatically. Something happens and they respond. Someone says something and they reply. A situation pulls on them and they engage without thinking twice about whether it's even worth it. And over time, that turns into a pattern where your energy is constantly being spent on things that don't give anything back. You respond to comments that don't matter. You defend yourself in situations that won't change. You give attention to things that only drain you. And because it feels small in the moment, you don't notice how much it adds up. But it does, because every reaction is an exchange. And most of those exchanges are uneven. Just because something reaches you doesn't mean it deserves anything from you. That's the shift that Taurus brings into focus. Taurus doesn't move impulsively. It doesn't react just because something appears in front of it. It evaluates. It stays grounded. It only engages when there's real value in doing so. And that changes how you move through everything. Instead of reacting immediately, you start asking yourself whether something is even worth your energy. You notice how often you're pulled into things that don't actually matter. And you start stepping back from them. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just quietly and consistently. That's what ignoring really is. It's not about pretending something doesn't exist. It's about recognizing that not everything deserves access to you. Power isn't shown by how much you respond, it's revealed by what you choose not to respond to. And once you begin to apply that, you start seeing something clearly. Most things lose their influence the moment you stop feeding them. Arguments don't escalate without participation. Provocation doesn't land without a reaction. Even people who seek attention lose interest when they can't pull anything out of you. But as long as you keep reacting, you keep those dynamics alive. You keep investing in them. You keep giving them space in your life. That's why this lesson feels uncomfortable at first, because it forces you to see how much you've been spending without thinking and how much of it was unnecessary. But once you start becoming selective, once you stop giving your reactions away automatically, your energy begins to consolidate. You're no longer scattered across multiple situations that don't matter, and that's when things start to shift in a real, noticeable way. You don't feel as drained. You don't feel as pulled in different directions. You don't feel the need to constantly respond to everything around you. Instead, you become steady. And that steadiness is what gives you a level of control most people never develop. And if you're still here, still listening, I genuinely appreciate you. This isn't the easier path. It's not natural at first to hold your ground, to stay quiet when everything in you wants to respond, to let things pass without stepping in. But the more you practice it, the more you start to feel the difference. Things don't pull you the same way. Situations don't drain you the same way. You start moving with a kind of steadiness that isn't easily shaken. And that's really what this moment is about. You don't need to chase every outcome. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You don't need to be everywhere, involved in everything, responding to everything. Sometimes, the strongest position is simply staying where you are and letting everything else move around you. So whatever this next phase brings for you, move through it with that in mind. You don't need to force your way forward. You don't need to rush into anything. Just stay grounded in yourself, and you'll start to notice the right things don't require you to react to them at all.